Speaker of the legislature in the Eastern Cape Province, when we were in the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League, he used to be the chairperson of the Congress Youth League here in this province. So he is part of the generation that saved economic freedom in our lifetime as a generational nation. And his deputy chairperson was Kamabuyan, who mistakes, he thinks Pick and Pay and university the same thing. I don't know what had happened later on that things got to change, because despite belonging to different homes, I would think that Comrade Mlibo has got a better temperament to could have led the generation even beyond that time. But you know, when you master factionalism and use money, you can always overtake people for serious leadership responsibilities. And that is the crisis that this province is confronted with, and might not be uprooted if nothing happens in terms of the work of the EFF. We've set aside everything else that we had to do today to come and pay tribute to Thembinkosi Apleni, because he was a very reliable and disciplined and dedicated fighter from the formation of the economic freedom fighters. So here in Buffalo City region, we had to restart the formation of the EFF, because when we started in the beginning, we realized that we did not start properly. Like the people that were elected by the first Regional People's Assembly did not show the necessary discipline and focus to lead and found the organization here. So we had to stop the term of office of the first RCT of Buffalo City, and then went into an early People's Assembly which elected Thembinkosi Apleni as the Secretary of the region. And that was sowing a seed that got to have Buffalo City as the best performing region in the entire Eastern Cape Province. Because if you look into elections post that from the second Regional People's Assembly, the third, there have been 4 Regional People's Assemblies in this region, when all other regions in the country of South Africa had 3 Regional People's Assemblies. Because we had to restart the formation of the EFF to do it properly. And when we restarted, we were blessed to have Thembinkosi Apleni as the Regional Secretary, who understood what had to be done, what is to be done in terms of building the organization. I'm not speaking positively about Apleni because he has passed away. Consistently, in all the interventions, in all the weaker regions and areas where we had difficulties, we would always prioritize sending him to say, let's revive the organization there. Because despite having stabilized Buffalo City, we used to have a lot of problems in Amatole region. And when we sent him to Amatole region, I remember when I actually got to pay far much more closer attention to him was when he had convened a relatively larger meeting of the EFF in Mosha municipality, where we had thought that we're not going to have any presence and relevance. Even the deployment that we made to Joga region was purposeful, because we knew that he is going to add value to the organization. Even us saying he must be deployed to the National Council of Provinces was a purposeful and clear decision, because we knew of the value that Apleni could add to the organization. He perfectly embodied one of the principles of organizational democracy in the constitution of the EFF, One of those principles says that it must be selflessness, like love for the organization and love for one another. He was a selfless leader of the organization. I'm not sure, Commissar Nolutando, if the organization loved him. Tembinkosi Aplane was not supposed to die. And I don't think that there is nothing we could have done about it. Because when one of ourselves, defined by this principle that we must love one another, begins to have problems, we should, consistent with our principles, begin to pay closer attention. Aplane was not killed by a natural disease or a natural cause. He took his life. And a person who takes a decision to take their life, they can be persuaded not to do so. If we knew what was happening, if ourselves who were surrounding Aplane knew what was happening around him, we could have persuaded him that there is a far much bigger agenda ahead of us. There is no need to take your life now. I'm saying this because on the 7th of May, we lost our councillor who was sick for a very long time. In Inogumukijima, Siabulela Jack. But the report of the province to head office all the time says, no, this person has disappeared, is no longer doing work, we must recall him. The province was saying, no, let's recall him, we must. He died just before the CCT that took place now. What does that mean? It means that we as an organization who do not love back the people who otherwise have dedicated their lives to this movement. I don't think that it's God's will that Aplane died. Because every time we rush to say, no, it's God's will, I don't think that God would want to have the life of one of the most disciplined, selfless people die in the manner in which Aplane had to, like where he was hopeless. That he took his life, it means that he thought that all of us here, including those of us who work with him closely, couldn't provide a solid solution to whatever problem was facing. We need to take a lesson from this, that it must never ever happen again. None of the leaders of the EFF, we must always look after each other. We must love one another. All the time, when you realize that it looks like there is something wrong with the colleagues, you must always look after one another. And you know, fighters, we always say that we as the leadership of the EFF, we do not come to say to you to do things that we do not do ourselves. Despite all of us in the officials in the top 6 working in different provinces and not getting time, but there will never be a time where the president, the secretary general, the national chairperson, the TG, everyone will always check on each other. Is everything fine? How is the family? How are the parents? Where do you stay? Who is paying for the place that you stay at? We ask those basic questions every day. What are your major installments? All those basic things. That is what loving one another, taking care of each other means. That is what we must be doing all the time. Then we're not going to have a situation where amongst us we have a councillor who gets sick for 3-4 months and the leadership of the province is not aware that when the councillor who was terminally ill, we're not going to have a situation where a provincial leader, provincial treasurer, out of whatever form of frustration he takes his life. And you can't claim ignorance here that you do not know that he had some differences with his wife. And those things can be resolved. Like, there's nothing that can be resolved in this earth. But what did we do about it? What did we do about it? The chairperson of the province, Yazin and Ven. What did we do about the difficulties, whatever difficulties that are plainly faced? It must never happen again, where we lose one of the most dedicated and most disciplined and focused fighters in the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. Do you know, in the 2014 elections here in the Eastern Cape, we received 75,000 voters, people who voted for the EFF. And in 2019, that number doubled, like increased by 100%. And due to, amongst other things, the work which Upland contributed to, but you would never hear him claim that I did all this work alone. Upland will never ever claim individual victories for collective effort, even when he was playing the most important role. And without fear of contradiction, I can tell you that just the PCT only, leave regions, just the PCT, the 25 PCT members, if the 25 PCT members could show the same levels of dedication and consistency and reliability that defined Upland, we're going to get more than 1 million votes in this province. There is no sound reason why the people of the Eastern Cape are only presented with one option of the ANC. It doesn't make sense. Everything else negative defines this province. The highest level of youth unemployment is in this province. The highest levels of corruption. The mud schools are still in this province. The highest number of pit toilets in schools are in this province. The highest number of dysfunctional municipalities are in this province. Where you have got municipalities that can't even pay salaries of their own workers. How do you think they're going to provide basic services? The ANC has dismally failed to run this province. It's the dismal failure. It therefore doesn't make sense that there can't be an alternative that is presented to our people. Just the PCT only. If we had a PCT that would demonstrate the same levels of dedication and focus and discipline, selflessness that defined Upland, we're going to win elections in this province. Because he had the patience of going to everywhere. And he was not doing it because he wants to impress anyone. Majority of times when you arrive in a region, even if you had called a meeting, he will try to disappear and give you the space to interact with branches. That is who Upland is. When the third Provincial People's Assembly took place here in Komisano, the branches of the EFF elected the top 5 of males only. He was contesting against a male fighter. Then when we called the top 5 elected, the males, the 5 males, and then I said, what should happen with this outcome? Upland was the first one, not even fiction. If these comrades are honest, will say, they will repeat the same thing. He said, I can give away my position, or you can get a female to replace me. He was the first one. Like, It didn't say that, no, now that I'm elected, spending like a zam. That people think that just being in a position, then your problems are finished. He knew that majority of times when we take these deployment positions to parliament and we always prioritize officials, but he says, no, I can give the position away if it's in the interest of gender parity in the organization. He didn't say, no, I'm going to be insisting, yeah, I've been elected here. If I'm not mistaken, he actually received possibly the highest votes of the officials that were voting. But he was the first one to say that for the interest of gender parity, I can give away this position. And then with others, we had to take a decision, a correct decision to correct the unlawful outcome of that PPA. So this is the, and if we can have just the 25, showing the levels of selflessness, of discipline, of dedication to the organization that Upland demonstrated, we're going to win elections in this province. This province is a very strategic province, not only in the life of the EFF, generally in the life of the economy of South Africa. So as an economic emancipation movement, as an economic freedom fighters, we must always talk about the economic significance of the provinces that we exist in. So geographically, the Eastern Cape is the second biggest province after Northern Cape. It's actually bigger than many countries in the African continent. The province of the Eastern Cape is bigger than Ghana. It's bigger than Burkina Faso. It's bigger than Malawi. It's bigger than Eritrea. It's bigger than Mali. It's bigger than Mauritius. It's bigger than Rwanda. There's got huge strategic advantage for many economic opportunities. I mean, I've got 800 kilometers of coastline. And the ocean by itself is an economy if it is utilized purposefully. There can be maximal value that can be generated out of the oceans here in the Eastern Cape if we were to have a sober and clear government that is committed to the interest of our people. 800 kilometers of coastal area. Port Elizabeth, East London obviously is part of the coastal line. Coffee Bay, Port Alfred, huge economic potential. Can explain the poverty of Port St. John's. It's coastal, but it's one of the poorest areas in the whole of South Africa. PSG. Because there's no government that is purposefully looking as to what do we do to change the conditions of our people. There is huge potential in agriculture. There is huge potential in the mineral resources. And the conditions of our people, I spoke about it earlier, that is the worst. All developmental indicators show that the Eastern Cape is worse in terms of everything. And there is no superpower or super being which is going to solve the problems of the Eastern Cape. It has to be ourselves here. And the EFF is an instrument, it's a weapon, it's a vehicle that can bring about meaningful change here in the Eastern Cape. Only if it has got people who are selfless, disciplined, focused, and dedicated in the same way Upland was. But if we are going to be all over and not be doing organizational work and not disciplined, always we are looking for ourselves, we are self-seeking. We are not going to be different from those who are in office now. We have, of course, taken a decision that we are going to, in some instances, participate in government, in Nelson Mandela, I think we must have the same discussions in relation to Sarah Barkman as well, in the municipalities which are being led by the DA. We must remove the DA. We are removing them for correctly characterizing us as their number one enemy. Because we are indeed the enemy of white monopoly capital as the EFF. So that characterization of the DA saying the EFF is their political enemy number one is a correct characterization, because we are of course number one enemy of white monopoly capital. And that is what the DA represents. So we want to show them how enemies behave everywhere where they got power through the vote of the EFF or abstinence of the EFF. We're going to show them flames everywhere. So we're going to remove them in Nelson Mandela and constitute government, which is not going to be led by the ANC. Must be led by a minority party, and then we're going to participate in that government. The chairperson of the province, there must not be any temptation that we are just going to substitute DA councillors and ANC councillors and continue with the same things that they've been doing of looting government resources. We're not substituting. We're changing government, and the agenda must change as to what do we seek to do with the departments which we are going to lead in that particular municipality. If anyone thinks that now that we're going to participate in government, it says now an opportunity to steal government money, that must come to an end. We have seen miracles that there is too much theft inside ANC municipalities. We are government partly in a Tequeen, we are government in a Kuruleni, majority government. The ANC is accommodated there as well. We are government in Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg. The extent of corruption that we discover there is a miracle. Do you know, there's an issue which we spoke about in public, about the municipality has got 106 trucks which were bought with number plates, everything is registered. They are all less than 5 years old. Truck is very big, those compactors of rubbish collection. Then we say, oh, can you show us the trucks? We want to sit them, and the drivers want to touch the trucks. We are more than a month in government. Now we've only seen 36 trucks. But the municipality bought 106 trucks. And what happens when we then go and open a police case that there is stolen vehicles now? The ANC in Ekurhuleni calls a press conference and say, no, there is no corruption. These trucks, we are going to find them. Give us a month, we'll find them. How do you take a month to trucks? That thing is very big. You can't, it's not a memory stick, that thing. Basic things, we have to change. Do you know these municipalities, the metros, have got huge revenue potential to generate their own money, a lot of money. So in Ekurhuleni has got 11 towns. Germiston, Brakpan, Alberton, Benoni, Boksburg, and it's got 26 townships and 163 informal settlements. But in all those areas, there is billboards which are owned by the municipality. The municipality only makes 17 million rand out of billboards, like outdoor advertising. But the municipality owns more than 3,000 billboards, but it only collects revenue from 80 billboards, 80. You can imagine how much money if we were, and not that the people who are occupying the remaining 2,900 billboards are not paying, they are paying. But someone is collecting money which is supposed to go to the municipality. you will realize those when we enter into government, the majority of municipalities under the rule of the Democratic Alliance and the rule of the DA are crime scenes. Winnimadikizela Mandela municipality is one of the poorest municipalities in South Africa, if not the poorest municipality in South Africa. But you have got a premier of this province involved in stealing money of the poorest municipality in the province, in the whole of South Africa. I've never been to any poorest area than Bizana, where there is no sign of government. There are areas where there is nothing government about it. No road, no water, nothing. And that will not change if we do not have a strong alternative as an organization that is going to be presented to our people. Fighters, like we say all the time, that proper scientific research and illustrations point to the fact that majority of the people of South Africa have lost faith in the ANC. They know the ANC is corrupt, it cannot do anything, but they still have not taken a decision as to who else. In our case, it's because we have not yet gone to all the corners of this province. We have not yet presented ourselves much more firmly to each and every one of all the 701 or 705 wards. How many was 710? If we present ourselves clearly in the way Upland did here in this province, the people are going to give us the mandate, but we are not doing so. We should, from Upland, show maximal dedication to. So in South Africa, you have got the existing power stations can produce. I'm going to talk about this purposefully. If you don't understand it, I'm sure we'll understand it next time. So in South Africa, we've got installed capacity to generate 54,000 megawatts of electricity. But to end load shedding in South Africa, you need about 33,000 to 37,000 megawatts. But we have got already the capacity to could produce 54,000 megawatts. But currently we have got like 25,000 megawatts because they've shut down the key units that were supposed to produce what is going to take us out of load shedding. The ANC now is like running a grid which has got only 25,000. If it goes below 20,000 and you try to ramp it up again, we're going to have a national blackout where the entire country will have no electricity at all. That is going to affect water supply. That is going to mean that when people die, they must be buried the same day because they won't be refrigerators. We are headed to a crisis because of a government that is incapable to solve our problems. Ourselves, we went to Parliament beginning of the year to say that when we are fixing this capacity of ESCOM, let us plug to the grid these FSRUs, the floating power stations. Even if we can plug them for 18 months or for 24 months, and then we'll go and fix the power stations of ESCOM. But first we must stop this illusion and craziness to think that we can move away from coal. There is no electricity that is going to come from anywhere else in South Africa immediately. Dependable electricity except from coal. And all these things that we're talking about are practical, can be done. When we say that the Russians have got capacity to help with electricity, we're not talking because we have read it somewhere in the newspaper. We met with the Russian ambassador to South Africa, and we met with technical experts who can bring about electricity in South Africa. When we say that the Chinese government is readily available to help with skills, we met with the Chinese ambassador and consular general to bring about proper solution to electricity. When we say that bring back Brian Molefe and Machela Kuku to go to ESCOM, it's because we sat down with them and said what we do with ESCOM. They illustrate to us step by step that if you give us that thing, in 3 months we're back to normality. So when we talk about electricity, we're not just theorizing. We're talking about things which can be done now. But the ANC, because of corruption, they've allocated 30 billion rand now for June only to buy diesel, 30 billion to buy diesel to power the power stations which otherwise were supposed to be getting electricity from coal. Because they want to enrich themselves, they want to steal for themselves. And if the grid collapses, we are going to dark ages. It will almost be impossible to take the grid back to its full functionality under the current government because of corrupt intentions, because of the corruption that they want to steal, to the extent that no, if we are not eating out of a solution, the solution must not come. That is what they do. You know, you can have a situation where people do not have water and the water solutions are there. Then they say, no, if we're not eating there, there's no water which is going to take place, going to happen. That is why we as the EFF becomes a perpetual and consistent relevance and alternative to say, instead of depending on these tenders, we must build state capacity to deliver services to our people in a much more dependable way. But to achieve all of that, we need a strong organization. We need an organization that is solid on the ground, which is comprised of volunteers who are selfless, which is comprised of ground forces who do work of the organization no matter where, no matter what time, like Upland was. Not self-seeking individuals. We need to have an organization that is found within the people. Not a group of people who are always together all the time. We must spread ourselves and go and speak to all the people in all the municipalities here, in all the world. Starting from now, the people are looking for alternatives. If you did not learn anything from Upland, at least learn the selflessness, dedication, and consistency and dependability. And as I close, I'm calling on all of us fighters that let us be all of us defined by this principle, which is even constitutional as well. We say that we're the only organization that has got love in its constitution to say we must love one another. Selflessness, love for the organization, and love for one another. I don't think that Upland should have died. I think, and I don't think that there's nothing we could have done about it. I don't think there's nothing, I don't think we're that helpless. Because if the leadership of the province officials had been engaging with him and then they realized there's something else, you elevate that to the national leadership to make interventions. What do we do? What kind of professional help do we source to help one another? So this must never happen again. So to the family, we apologize because Apleni has made the EFF to be his second home. It was his main love of so many things that he was involved in. The sister says he was a breadwinner, he took care of everyone else, and we felt the same, that he took care of all of us as well in the organization. The province must talk as to what then do we do that a breadwinner has been lost in the Apleni family, and come with sound proposal as to what interventions do we make, because to some extent we should have shown back the love that Apleni had for the organization. We should have protected him from everything, including from differences with his wife. We should have found a way of amicably resolving the problems, and we could have avoided the situation that we are in now. And this therefore calls on all of us as ground forces of the EFF, RCT members, PCT members, CCT members, members of parliament, all the time check what are the issues that define all of us. Whether we are well positioned to continue performing our tasks. I do not think that there is something insurmountable that we could have not done to save the life of Thembinkosi Apleni. He was a great soldier. We salute him. The Secretary General will come and bid farewell to him on Saturday. Thank you very much.